Chapter 1. It was a dark and stormy night. There were tadpoles in the swimming pool. The last usable coffee filter had been sucked down the garbage disposal, and the cat had graced the living room carpet with a hairball the size of Montana. I was in a mood. Brenda had just walked out my front door, the scent of her perfume, muskrat loved, still clinging to the room. Brenda, all red lips and green eyes and those two slightly overlapping front teeth that gave her that knock-kneed smile I could never get out of my mind. While the refrigerator hiccuped, I got out the tongs to wrestle with the garbage disposal, and I thought about Brenda. I could never really trust Brenda. She was too tall, too shapely, too lethal. Not to mention she kept a set of falcon jesses in her raincoat pocket. I wasn't a bird of prey to be leashed, or was I? I went to the burping refrigerator and took out a beer. The wind was howling outside. No, it wasn't the wind, it was the cat yowling. I had slammed his tail in the refrigerator door. Served him right for decorating my living room carte blanche. My problem was jealousy. Brenda was looking for the mysterious man that had dropped a red bandana in her lap while lunching at the Dirty Martini. She'd never seen him before. According to her, he leaned forward, looked into those cool green eyes, and uttered only two words, "Cat and mouse." All right, so it was three words. He dropped the bandana and left, abruptly. What kind of man did that sort of thing? A bank robber? An off-duty cowboy? I might never know. I opened the sliding door and tossed the yowling cat into the tadpole-filled pool. The rain was screaming in sheets, and the palm trees did a mad, demonic dance. It was hurricane season, and I didn't even have a can of tuna in the house. That didn't matter. I didn't have a can opener. I pulled an old coffee filter out of the trash and squirted a little shampoo on it. While I squished and sloshed it under the sink faucet, I thought about the bandana. Red paisley with the initials JB on one corner. A smear of red lipstick in the middle. It made no sense. Who was JB? A cross-dressing bandana thief? Not likely. Could it be? It couldn't be. Johnny Bandana. Johnny Bandana, the notorious cat burglar. Notorious, not for stealing jewels, but for stealing cats. I peered out the sliding glass door. My cat, wet and shrieking, had plastered his furry butt to the screen door with all four sets of claws. I could see the whites of his eyes. I pulled the drapes shut and turned on the patio light. If it was a cat JB wanted, he could have mine. I'd hand him over on a silver platter with a squeaky toy stuffed in his mouth. The storm roared on, and I could hear the nails popping out of the fascia board. Hail was hitting the front door like bullets. My beer was warm, and I didn't care. I went to the fridge and got another. A trail of sugar ants marched across the kitchen counter like Nazis, and I poured the remains of the warm beer over them. Might as well have happy ants. The first time I met Brenda, she'd come to my office on Tampa Street, an office shrouded in such obscurity you had to cross 3 railroad tracks and kill 2 rats in the alley before you found it. I was surrounded by an antique bookstore so old a cloud of dust shot like a plume when the front door was opened, a medical doctor of such questionable repute the garbage men wouldn't collect his trash, and Harvey's Eats across the street. Harvey's Eats was referred to as the neighborhood slop house, usually accompanied by a lot of eye-rolling and snickering. The H and E on the neon sign was burnt out, giving ground to the additional term Harvey's Rats. The shish kebab on the menu looked too much like rodent on a stick to be ignored by anyone. Brenda glided into my office one rainy afternoon in June, tall and sleek in an emerald green sheath, with long, dangling earrings to match. The earrings were 2 inches long, prong-set Aurora Borealis stones, and emerald green with peridot accents. I know all this because I was once hired to tail a jewelry designer suspected of stealing design secrets from a rival. Brenda took one off while rubbing her ear, complaining that the screw-back clasp always left dents in her earlobes. When she had gone, the lone earring still lay on my dusty desk, a sparkling emerald reflection of the woman that wore it. I keep it in my underwear drawer. Brenda was looking for a man then, too. Her fiancé, Richard Peyton. Peyton turned out to be an undercover underwear model with 20 cents in his bank account, a questionable past involving bull-legged racehorses, and a bungalow in West Palm Beach. The bungalow had been raided 3 times by the police and was now permanently swathed in yellow and red tape. When $20,000 turned up missing in Brenda's bank account and she found teeth marks on the checkbook cover, she grew suspicious. By then, Peyton had disappeared. Peyton was no good, and I knew it as soon as Brenda showed me the glossy photos of him and his BVDs. No man that tautly rippled could have a brain and ethics, too. It just went against the law of nature. Brenda cried a little then over his disappearance, and I almost handed her my handkerchief. But the handkerchief hadn't been washed in a couple of weeks and had axle grease on it. I reached over to the coffee pot instead and handed her a couple of clean coffee filters. She dabbed at her eyes with them, and I discreetly shoved my dirty handkerchief into my back pocket. Wish I had that box of filters now. I finished rinsing the filter I had pulled out of the trash and put it in the coffee pot. The windows were rattling like a junkyard truck, and the lights flickered. I heard a dim shout over the storm's din and peered through the blinds out into the night. The rain was coming down in a fury, sideways, in sheets. Mrs. Weedle's wash was being blown away with it, down the street, still attached to the clothesline. Mr. Weedle came into view, chasing after it in his striped pajamas. I let the blinds fall and went back to the coffee pot. Rats. There wasn't any coffee. But wait a minute. I went into the bedroom, pulled the suitcase out from under the bed, and riffled through a heap of white dress shirts. Bingo. The coffee my mother had given me last December when I visited Boston. While the coffee perked, I mopped up the beer and ants. I tried to think about anything but Brenda, Peyton, and Johnny Bandana. I couldn't think at all. The cat was screaming louder than the wind outside. I went to the sliding door and pulled the drapes back, yanking the door open about 6 inches. The cat shot inside, a bullet of orange wet fur. He went to the fireplace, glared malevolently at me, and began to lick himself. Stupid cat. It was a well-known fact that Johnny Bandana courted cats, but it wasn't a fact anybody could prove since the cats always disappeared, and the most obvious thief just happened to be Bandana. It was rumored that the last cat he'd stolen belonged to a Chinese official with his own private mafia, a lethal band of warriors known in certain circles as the Red Ninjas. Just why a Chinese official kept Japanese bodyguards eluded me. The Chinese official might have sent them in to retrieve the cat, but J.B. lived on his own impenetrable estate in New Orleans with a raffish cast of bodyguards and henchmen he called the Lost Boys. Why would J.B. go after Brenda? Brenda didn't even have a cat. Maybe Peyton was the key. Peyton did more than strut in front of the camera in his boxer shorts. He was also a known gambler and a hack writer. Did he owe J.B. money? Had he written something defamatory about him? Brenda had met Richard Peyton when a girlfriend had dragged her to his last book signing. Good grief! I had the book! It hit me like a tornado, and I stood in the middle of the kitchen trying to remember where I had put it since that day Brenda brought it to me in a brown paper bag. I vaguely remembered sticking it somewhere safe, but nothing came rushing to mind. Nothing, except the vague notion that the book was buried in snow. But it didn't snow in Tampa, not in August, not in the middle of a hurricane. Heck, it didn't snow in Tampa in January.